there is a part of you that you rarely speak about. A silent craving, a secret urge, a hidden desire that whispers when no one is listening. It doesn't care about the mask you wear, or the rules society built for you. It simply waits, shaping your choices, your body, and even your destiny. Welcome to this journey into the psychology of hidden desires. For the next hour, I invite you to step into the dimly lit corridors of the human mind, places Carl Jung called the shadow, where everything we deny, suppress, or fear still lives. Places Freud believed were governed by the unconscious, driven by instincts we barely understand. We often like to think we are rational creatures, guided by logic and reason. Yet, beneath the surface of polite words and civilized actions, another world is alive. A world where the body remembers what the mind forgets, where cravings are written into our flesh, and where unspoken longings dictate who we become. So let us wander together through philosophy, psychology, and physiology to uncover the forces shaping our hidden desires. What is desire? At its core, it is the pull toward something we lack, or at least something we believe we lack. Desire is older than language. Before we could speak, we hungered. Before we could explain, we reached. A newborn child doesn't need words to desire warmth, comfort, or the sound of its mother's heartbeat. Sigmund Freud argued that desire is the foundation of human psychology. He called it the ID, that primitive force of lust, hunger, aggression, and pleasure that beats like a drum in every one of us. He believed society forces us to repress much of this energy, pushing it into the unconscious. But the energy never disappears. It hides. Carl Jung took this further. To him, desire was not just animal instinct, it was also spiritual longing. Jung saw desire as an archetype, the lover, the seeker, the wanderer. He believed our hidden desires are often gateways to understanding who we really are, if we are brave enough to face them. And Nietzsche, he spoke of desire not as weakness, but as a kind of creative fire. One must still have chaos in oneself, he wrote, to give birth to a dancing star. For Nietzsche, hidden desires were not sins to be suppressed but forces to be transformed into strength. But what happens when these desires remain hidden? When we bury them so deep that even we forget they exist? Here is the truth. Your body knows your desires, even when your mind denies them. Think about the nervous system. It doesn't lie. When you want something you are not supposed to want, your heart races, your palms sweat, your breathing changes. The body becomes restless. Modern neuroscience shows us that desire isn't just in the mind, it's wired into our physiology. The dopamine pathways of the brain light up when we imagine what we secretly crave. The limbic system, the emotional core of the brain, responds before reason even has a chance to interfere. Freud once compared repressed desire to steam in a kettle. If it has no release, it builds pressure, distorting the personality, sometimes leading to neurosis or even physical illness. Jung described it as the shadow, the part of us we exile. But exile doesn't mean death. Exiled desires return in dreams, in sudden impulses, in strange bodily symptoms. Have you ever felt a longing you couldn't explain? A sudden attraction, a craving, an ache that may not be random. That is your body whispering secrets your conscious mind is too afraid to admit. Why do desires remain hidden? Because society teaches us to wear masks. From childhood, we are told which desires are acceptable and which must be suppressed. A boy is told not to cry. A girl is told not to show too much ambition. A child's longing for attention may be labeled as weakness. Sexual desires are cloaked in shame. Ambitions beyond our family's expectations are silenced. Alfred Adler, another great psychologist, believed that much of human behavior is shaped by feelings of inferiority. We hide desires not because they are wrong, but because we fear rejection, failure, or humiliation. So, we learn to disguise ourselves, to become what others expect. We carry Jung's persona, the mask we wear in public. But behind the mask, the shadow grows darker, waiting for recognition. Nietzsche warned of this. He despised the morality of the herd, the way society tames individuals into conformity. To deny your hidden desires, Nietzsche said, is to deny life itself. For him, the greatest tragedy was not failure, but never daring to live fully. And so the body, the psyche, and society enter into a war. The irony of repression is this: the more we hide a desire, the more it controls us. Take the example of addiction. Many who suffer from addictions are not simply seeking substances. They are trying to fill a hidden longing for connection, for freedom, for escape from pain. The body acts out what the conscious mind refuses to admit. Or think of relationships. How often do people sabotage love because of unconscious desires for validation, or fears rooted in childhood wounds? Freud would call these the return of the repressed. Jung would say it is the shadow crying out for acknowledgement. And then there are dreams. Have you noticed how often your dreams reveal what you deny in waking life? Jung believed dreams were the royal road to the unconscious, windows into the desires we cannot face in daylight. Your hidden desires will always find a way to express themselves through the body, through dreams, through slips of the tongue, through the choices you make without knowing why. The question is not whether you have hidden desires. The question is, do you have the courage to face them? Carl Jung once said, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. To grow, we must turn toward the shadow." This does not mean acting on every impulse. Hidden desires are not always meant to be lived out literally, but they must be acknowledged, understood, and integrated. Take the story of a man who spent his life working in finance. Outwardly, he was successful, but deep within, he carried a hidden desire to create art. He ignored it, because society told him money was more important than painting. But his body betrayed him. He grew restless, anxious, sick. Only when he finally picked up a brush again, even as a hobby, did his health and spirit revive. Jung would say, this man met his shadow. He allowed his hidden desire not to dominate him, but to guide him back to wholeness. Nietzsche would call this the transformation of desire into creation. Freud might see it as sublimation, the redirection of hidden impulses into meaningful action. What is repressed can become destructive, but what is integrated can become powerful. Let us return to the body. Modern research shows that suppressed emotions affect the immune system, cardiovascular health, even the gut. A body burdened by hidden desires carries constant stress. Cortisol levels rise. Inflammation spreads. The nervous system never rests. But when we acknowledge our desires, whether through art, movement, therapy, or honest relationships, the body changes. The parasympathetic nervous system, which governs rest and healing, awakens. The body exhales. The heart rate slows. The immune system strengthens. Jung was right. What you resist, persists. And Freud was right too. The body keeps score of what the mind cannot face. To deny your hidden desires is not just a psychological issue. It is a physiological one. So here is the revelation. Hidden desires are not shameful enemies. They are mirrors, showing us what we lack, what we fear, what we hunger for in life. If you long for recognition, perhaps your hidden desire is not vanity, but the need to be truly seen. If you crave escape, perhaps your hidden desire is not weakness, but freedom. If you ache for love, perhaps your hidden desire is not dependency, but the deep human need for connection. Carl Jung, Sigmund Freud, Nietzsche, Adler, Erikson, all in their own ways told us the same truth, that what we hide holds the key to who we are. To run from your desires is to remain divided. To face them is to begin healing. So what can we learn? First, listen to your body. The nervous system never lies. The racing heart, the restless nights, the tension in your chest, these are not random. They are signals of unspoken desires. Second, acknowledge your shadow. Do not fear it. Your hidden desires may not need to be acted out, but they must be understood. Third, transform. Don't suppress. Freud called it sublimation. Nietzsche called it creation. Jung called it integration. Whatever name you choose, the path is the same. Take your hidden desires and shape them into something meaningful. And finally, remember that hidden desires are not signs of weakness. They are signs of life. They remind us that beneath the masks we wear, we are still human, fragile, longing, searching, but also capable of great transformation. So tonight, when you lie down and listen to the whispers in your own mind, ask yourself, what desire have I hidden from myself? What shadow am I afraid to face? And what might happen if I finally listened? For in that hidden desire may lie not your downfall, but your awakening. Hidden desires often begin in childhood. Think back to when you were young, before the rules of society were fully written on your skin. You desired freely. To play, to explore, to cry, to laugh without shame. Children live close to their desires. They reach for what they want with open hands. But slowly, the world teaches restraint. Parents say, don't cry, be strong. Teachers say, don't daydream, pay attention. Society says, don't be selfish, don't be too loud, don't want too much. Each don't becomes a wall. And behind those walls, desires go underground. Freud believed that our earliest conflicts between what we want and what we're allowed to express shape the entire architecture of the psyche. The forbidden desires don't vanish. They hide in the unconscious, waiting. Jung agreed, but he went further. Those repressed childhood longings grow into the shadow, and if ignored too long, they distort into something darker. A longing for love may twist into jealousy. A need for freedom may transform into rebellion. Have you ever wondered why certain situations trigger you more than they should? Why a small rejection feels devastating? Why certain people irritate you, not because of who they are, but because of what they awaken in you? That is the child within you, carrying hidden desires that were never given space to breathe. Our hidden desires are not silent. The body speaks them in its own language. Have you noticed how a person's posture can reveal more than their words? A hunched back that hides shame? A restless leg tapping out anxiety? A sudden blush when desire is near? The nervous system is ancient, older than thought, older than speech. It remembers everything. Trauma, longing, suppressed emotions, they leave fingerprints on the body. Psychologist Bessel van der Kolk famously wrote, "The body keeps the score," and indeed it does. The heart races when it remembers love never received. The stomach knots when it recalls unspeakable fears. The skin flushes when forbidden attraction burns from beneath the surface. Freud, with his obsession for psychosomatic symptoms, believed the body often disguises unspoken desires as illness. Headaches, fatigue, muscle tension. Sometimes these are not just physical, but the body's encrypted messages. And Jung would say, listen closely. These symptoms are symbols, carrying meaning. Just as dreams reveal the unconscious in images, the body reveals it in sensations. So the next time your body aches without reason, or your chest tightens without warning, ask yourself, what desire is trying to speak through me? We are all actors, wearing masks. Jung called it the persona. In public, we play roles: the good son, the reliable worker, the loyal partner. These roles protect us, help us function, help us belong. But behind the mask, the truth waits. Society rewards the mask, but punishes the shadow. If you speak your hidden desires too openly, you may risk ridicule, exile, rejection. And so most people settle for half-truths. They present the socially acceptable self while burying the forbidden self. But here lies the danger. The mask, if worn too long, begins to suffocate. The shadow, if ignored too long, begins to rebel. Nietzsche warned us against this herd morality. He believed most people live as obedient animals, too afraid to unleash their inner fire. The result? A life half-lived, a soul caged in politeness, while hidden desires scream in silence. Have you ever felt that quiet suffocation? That sense of living a role rather than a life? If so, it may be time to ask, what mask am I wearing? And what desire hides beneath it? Here is the paradox. What we deny gains more power. Imagine holding a beach ball underwater. The harder you press it down, the more force it gathers. The moment you lose control, it bursts to the surface with explosive energy. Hidden desires work the same way. Deny them long enough, and they emerge in destructive forms. The unacknowledged desire for love becomes toxic attachment. The suppressed hunger for freedom erupts as reckless rebellion. The denied longing for power turns into passive aggression or sudden cruelty. Freud described this as the return of the repressed. Jung described it as the shadow taking over the personality. Nietzsche saw it as resentment, the bitter poison of those who could not live their desires openly. And it shows in the body, too. Chronic stress, insomnia, even autoimmune disorders. Modern science increasingly confirms that unexpressed emotions and desires can manifest in the flesh. So denial is not safety. Denial is danger. The real question is not how to bury desires deeper, but how to bring them into the light. At night, when the conscious mind sleeps, the hidden desires come out to play. Dreams are the stage where the unconscious performs its secret plays. Freud called dreams the royal road to the unconscious. He believed every dream hides a wish, sometimes obvious, sometimes disguised. Jung agreed, but he believed dreams were more than wish fulfillment. They were messages, symbols, archetypes, desires dressed in metaphor. A burning house may symbolize a hidden longing for transformation. A mysterious stranger may represent a repressed attraction. Flight may reflect the secret desire for freedom. Have you ever had a dream so strange, so vivid, that it haunted you long after waking? That was likely your hidden desire speaking in code. And the body responds even in dreams. The heart races during a nightmare. The body sweats during forbidden fantasies. Even in sleep, physiology and psychology remain entwined. So if you wish to know your hidden desires, study your dreams. They are the shadow's diary. Let me tell you a few stories. A woman worked as a lawyer for 20 years. Outwardly, she was successful. But inside, she carried a secret longing to create art. She ignored it, believing it childish. Yet her body told the truth: depression, chronic pain, and exhaustion. Only when she finally gave herself permission to paint, not for money, not for fame, but simply for herself, did her symptoms begin to lift. The man who feared desire. Another man was raised in a strict household, where love and sexuality were taboo. He grew into adulthood hiding his attractions, ashamed of every impulse. His hidden desires expressed themselves as anxiety, panic attacks, and isolation. Only through therapy, by acknowledging that his desires were not evil, but human, did he begin to heal. The child who wanted to be seen. A boy grew up in a family that praised achievement, but ignored emotional needs. His hidden desire was simple: to be noticed, to be loved for who he was. As an adult, this longing turned into perfectionism and overwork. His body burned out. Only when he faced the truth, that what he longed for was love, not success, could he change his life. These stories remind us, hidden desires do not vanish. They shape our lives until we face them. So, how do we transform hidden desires? Freud offered the idea of sublimation, channeling forbidden desires into socially acceptable forms. The desire for aggression could become art, sport, or creation. The desire for passion could fuel music or poetry. Jung emphasized integration, not denying the shadow, but befriending it. To say, yes, this too is part of me. I will not let it rule me, but I will not exile it either. Nietzsche called for transformation, turning hidden desires into strength, into creativity, into the will to power. He did not mean domination of others, but mastery of oneself. And Adler reminded us of social interest, that even our hidden desires for greatness can find their fulfillment in service, in contributing to something beyond ourselves. Transformation does not mean acting out every impulse. It means honoring the truth of what you want, then finding a wise, life-giving way to express it. Here is the beauty. When hidden desires are acknowledged, the body changes. Neuroscience shows that facing suppressed emotions reduces activity in the amygdala, the brain's fear center. Heart rate steadies, muscles relax. The parasympathetic system, which governs healing and restoration, comes alive. In other words, when you stop fighting yourself, your body can finally rest. Jung would say integration brings wholeness. Freud would say catharsis brings release. Modern science simply confirms what ancient wisdom already knew, that body and mind are inseparable, and that peace within brings health without. Hidden desires are not flaws, they are part of being human. Every saint had secret struggles. Every philosopher wrestled with longings they could not fully name. Desire is not the enemy of the soul, it is the fuel of life. What matters is not whether we have hidden desires. What matters is whether we face them with honesty, courage, and compassion. For in the end, hidden desires are not here to destroy us. They are here to guide us back to ourselves. So as we end this journey, I leave you with a question. What is the desire you have hidden from yourself? What longing lives in your shadow, waiting for your attention? Do not fear it. Do not bury it deeper. Instead, listen, for in the whisper of your hidden desires lies the key to your healing, your growth, and your awakening. Because sometimes, the part of ourselves we hide the most is the part we need the most. Look around the modern world, and you'll see hidden desires everywhere. The endless scroll of social media, isn't it? At its core, a collective longing to be seen, to be noticed, to be loved in the gaze of strangers. The obsession with consumerism, buying, collecting, owning more, is it not often a disguised desire for security, for status, for belonging? Even the rise of burnout in workplaces reveals something deeper. We say we're tired of work, but often it's not work itself. It's the buried desire for meaning. Ignored under piles of empty tasks and endless deadlines, Carl Jung warned that a society which ignores the shadow becomes sick. Freud might add that when hidden desires are repressed on a mass scale, collective neuroses form wars, addictions, widespread anxiety. So hidden desires are not just personal, they shape cultures, economies, and civilizations. If we ignore them, we risk building societies that are hollow, efficient, but soulless. Nietzsche foresaw this too. He feared that without facing our deepest longings, humanity would descend into nihilism, a life without purpose. For him, hidden desires were the sparks of creation, the very forces that could save us from despair. But we must be careful. Not all desires are meant to be fulfilled directly. Desire has a dual nature. On one hand, it is life-giving, the hunger that drives us to create, to connect, to love, to dream. On the other hand, unchecked desire can become destructive, greed, obsession, compulsion. Freud saw this duality as the battle between eros, the life instinct, and thanatos, the death instinct. Desire can build, but it can also destroy. Jung saw the same truth in his concept of the shadow. What you refuse to face becomes dangerous not because it is evil, but because it is unconscious. The danger lies not in desire itself, but in its denial and distortion. Think of fire. In the hearth, it warms the home. Uncontrolled, it burns everything to ash. Desire is like that. It can light your path or consume you whole. This is why the great task is not to suppress desire, nor to blindly indulge it, but to transform it, to make it conscious, to place it in service of your highest values. Throughout history, human beings have created rituals to confront their hidden desires. In ancient Greece, the mysteries of Eleusis allowed initiates to face their deepest fears and longings through sacred ceremonies. In India, yogic practices were designed to channel sexual and creative energy into spiritual awakening. In Christianity, confession served as a way to bring hidden desires into the open, to cleanse through honesty. Why so many rituals? Because humans have always known that hidden desires are powerful. Left unacknowledged, they rule us. But when faced in ritual, in honesty, in community, they can heal us. Nietzsche longed for such rituals in modern times. He saw that without them, people drift into meaninglessness. Jung too believed, modern man suffers not from lack of information, but from lack of connection to the symbolic, the sacred, the deeper layers of the psyche. Perhaps this is why therapy, art, storytelling, even simple, honest conversations, have such power. They are modern rituals, spaces where hidden desires can be spoken, acknowledged, transformed. Imagine sitting quietly in a dark room. No phone, no distractions, just silence. At first it feels uncomfortable. Then, slowly, a voice begins to rise within. That voice is your shadow. It speaks in half-formed thoughts, in memories you forgot, in longings you denied. The voice of the shadow is often unsettling. It tells you truths you'd rather ignore. You are not happy. You want something different. You crave love, freedom, power, meaning. Most people drown out this voice with noise, work, entertainment, endless busyness, but the shadow waits. Carl Jung believed that if we do not listen to the shadow, it will speak in darker ways through depression, anxiety, destructive habits. But if we dare to listen, the voice becomes a guide. Freud would call it the return of repressed material. Nietzsche would call it the call of life itself. So ask yourself, when was the last time you truly sat with your shadow? When was the last time you listened to what your hidden desires were trying to say? To face hidden desires requires courage, because often, what we discover is inconvenient. The successful professional realizes he does not desire wealth, but freedom. The devoted parent realizes she still longs for personal dreams left behind. The loyal partner realizes he hides a longing for passion never spoken aloud. These realizations shake the ground beneath us. They demand change. And change is frightening. This is why many people prefer to stay asleep, to keep desires hidden. But as Jung said, there is no coming to consciousness without pain. Nietzsche too spoke of the courage needed to embrace desire, the willingness to step beyond the herd, to become who you truly are, even if it means walking alone. Courage does not mean acting on every desire. It means acknowledging the truth of what you feel, even when it unsettles the life you've built. And it means asking, how can I live in alignment with my deepest desires, without losing myself to them? The great task of life is healing the split between the mask and the shadow, between the life we show and the life we secretly want. When the split is too wide, we feel fragmented, exhausted, hollow. But when we begin to close the gap by listening, integrating, transforming, something extraordinary happens. We begin to feel whole. The nervous system calms. The body breathes. The soul feels at home. Freud would say this is the release of repression. Jung would say this is individuation, becoming whole. Nietzsche would say this is the birth of the Bermensch, the self-created being who transforms hidden desires into art, strength, life. And Erik Erikson, with his stages of development, would remind us that at each stage of life, hidden desires shift. What we hide as children differs from what we hide as adults, and later as elders. The task is never complete. It is a lifelong dialogue with the self. Healing the split is not about perfection. It is about honesty, about daring to live closer to your truth. So let us reframe hidden desires, not as enemies, but as gifts. They reveal where we are hungry. They point to what is missing. They show us the gap between who we are and who we might become. The desire for love reveals the human need for connection. The desire for freedom reveals the soul's need for authenticity. The desire for power reveals the longing to shape one's destiny. The desire for meaning reveals the eternal human hunger for purpose. Without desire, life is flat. Without hidden desires, growth would stop. It is precisely what we long for, even in silence, that propels us forward. Nietzsche once wrote, "At the bottom of every great thing lies a desire." And Jung would agree, within the shadow lie the seeds of transformation. So the gift is not the desire itself, but the invitation it carries. Will you dare to live closer to your truth? We began this journey with a simple truth. You have desires you do not speak about. And now, as we close, I ask, what would it mean for you to listen? To allow the whispers of your hidden self to guide you, not into chaos, but into wholeness. The task is not easy. The path is not without pain, but it is the only path that leads to a life fully lived. Freud gave us the courage to admit that desire shapes us. Jung gave us the tools to face the shadow. Nietzsche gave us the fire to transform it into creation. Erikson reminded us that every stage of life brings new longings to embrace. And now it is your turn. Tonight, When the noise of the world fades, listen for the voice within. Do not silence it. Do not shame it. Let it speak. For within your hidden desires lies not your weakness, but your awakening. You are not broken for having hidden desires. You are human. And to be human is to long, to crave, to hunger, and ultimately, to transform those desires into the story of your becoming. So listen well. For the psychology of hidden desires is the psychology of your soul.